Hello and welcome to Arsenal Analysed Live episode number 2. For those of you watching live or maybe back as a video, a very, very big welcome on what's been a fantastic weekend of football for Arsenal. We're top of the league, aren't we, Keith?
We appear to be, yeah, mate. 2 points clear and a goal clear as well. So, yeah, it's
absolutely.
been all right.
How have you been anyway? You been okay?
I've been busy, mate. I've had a week off with the family, and I'm looking forward to going back to work for a rest tomorrow because I'm absolutely knackered.
Good man. Well, thank you very much for your time.
How are you?
I'm good.
More importantly,
I'm very, very good. I've had a busy day myself, actually, cooking dinner for the family. I had a bunch of kids around earlier, nieces, nephews, and whatnot. So I'm absolutely shattered. So I think after this, I'm probably going to get into bed and watch some rubbish TV and catch up on a few bits and pieces. So, but nonetheless, I'm very much looking forward to this. And not only my co-host is joining me this evening, Keith, I've got 2 fantastic guests that I would like to introduce you to. First of which, an old gentleman that featured on the channel quite a few times. You might recognize him if you've been a regular watcher for some time. We've got my man, Neil. How are we doing, my friend? You good? Oh, he's on mute. He hasn't done this for a while.
It's been a while. How are you guys doing?
Very
good.
Very
good,
good.
Mate.
Yeah, it's happy to be back on a little bit. It's been busy for some other stuff, but we'll see how it goes. Let's go.
Brilliant. And I do have a 4th and final guest, another old face from some of the earlier live streams back last season. We have John. How are we doing this evening, my friend?
Good. It's a pleasure to be on. And well, when Arsenal's winning, life's normally good. So I'm looking forward to tonight, lads.
Well, look, we've got plenty to get through in terms of questions, all the hot topics from the last 2 or 3 weeks since the very first episode of Arsenal Analysed. And fortunately, I have fixed the chat this week. Unfortunately, it wasn't available last time out, but I have fixed it. So if you do have any questions, if you do want to get involved in answering some of the questions that I've got lined up for my guests, please do get involved in the chat. And more good news, there will be opportunities in the future for subscribers and viewers to join in live with Arsenal Analysed. I will shortly be launching a membership scheme on the channel where you will have opportunities to join in live with these shows. But without no further ado, let's get stuck into question number 1. And I'll come to you first, Keith. Real sort of simple question, really, not too complicated. I just wanted to sort of grab your sort of general thoughts on what you've made of Arsenal's start to this new Premier League campaign.
It's been rubbish, really, isn't it? I'm not impressed at all.
It's not good enough.
No, I know. We probably should have banged about 5 past them by half time yesterday, but no, I jest. If you think about it, 3 games in last season, we're 9 points better off now, and our goal difference is plus 16 on where we were last season. But aside from the stats, we look like a proper unit, a proper team.
Yeah.
And we're still, I think we all probably agree, we're still a couple of signings shy from where we want to be come the end of the window. But I've been so impressed with just the intensity that we've shown. And there are link-ups all over the field. Yeah. There's one that I'm not too happy about, but we might come to that a little bit later. But aside from that, we look like a proper team. And I'm not getting carried away. We're 3 games in. So, we're under no illusions that there's going to be much tougher games ahead. But when we did this last show, and I think you asked how many points I thought we would have in the first 5 games.
Yeah,
we're ahead of that, and I'm one of the more optimistic Arsenal fans that you'll come across. And
same.
I couldn't have asked for a better start. I really, really couldn't. And aside from the stats and where we are with the goal difference and the points compared with last season, just the way we're playing and the way the lads are applying themselves, and the way the media seem to hate us even more right now. I can't get enough of that.
They're not happy, are they?
No, they're really not.
That first game of the season, it got to script, did it, according to Sky Sports?
No, it did not at all. I think they were expecting lightning to strike twice on a Friday night. But no, I love the fact that they're not happy, but we are. So yeah, very, very happy so far, mate.
Good. I literally can't do anything but mirror everything that you've said. You know, we're certainly with regards to being 9 points further along compared to last season, and the type of football that we're playing is just absolutely phenomenal. It's difficult not to get carried away at times. And one of my biggest fears prior to the season starting, when we done this last show, you know, me, you, Scott, and Albert, some of us were excited. Some of us were holding that excitement back heading into the season. And I'm glad that it's transitioned very nicely. There hasn't been a dip in terms of that intensity that you've spoken about. We've absolutely blown teams away at times, which is very, very good to see. You look like you're about to say something there, Keith.
No, the main thing I was going to say, we did mention before the season started that it looked like we were going, the general tactics seemed to be seriously high press first half, start the second half, sit back a little bit and consolidate, and then maybe counter attack towards the end of the second half. That seems to be continuing. Whether other teams will get wise to that, they probably will do at some point, and there'll be times when that won't quite work out for us. But that seems to be quite a decent game plan as far as I can see.
Yeah, so far so good. I'm keen to see how Arsenal may line up tactically, which will come onto in terms of tactics in a later part of this video against the tougher teams, if you will, the Cities, the Liverpools, the Chelseas, who had a terrible results there against Leeds. But coming to you, Neil, before me and Keith get too carried away, same question really. What have your sort of general thoughts been on to the opening to this campaign for Arsenal?
It's been everything that every Arsenal fan can hope and pray for. That's all I can say. Because when we look back at the preseason games and we saw, especially against Chelsea and against Sevilla, that type of intensity that was displayed in those two preseason games, it didn't appear to be a preseason game to the players. You know, they had intent. You know, they had a completely different disposition when it came to attacking the ball or playing without the ball. And that has just transitioned into the actual league right now. You know, looking back at those three games, who would have thought that Arsenal away to Crystal Palace, keeping a clean sheet. Winning is one thing, but keeping a clean sheet was super important, you know, and then away to Bournemouth, again, another clean sheet. Those clean sheets are going to come in so very, very handy for us going down the road, because today, looking at City drawing against Newcastle, conceding 3 goals, that's going to hurt them, because, you know, as we were talking when we weren't live yet, the likes of Liverpool, they are going to gain momentum. You know, we can't look at anyone's form right now, even United's form, and take it for granted. We started 3 losses last season, you know, and look at where we finished, as John mentioned. So, you know, we just have to, I'm just keeping myself very calm. I don't want to explode into excitement. Take it one game at a time, and let's see where it leads us come the end of the season.
No, you make a very, very good point. We've got some interesting games coming up. Some tough games. Fulham are a team that have surprised me. I did think they would struggle. They're a team that seemed to yo-yo in and out of the Premier League, but they had a very good opening game against Liverpool, and we face them next. And we'll get onto that in terms of our upcoming fixtures right at the very end of today's live show. Something else that I wanted to touch on, we'll move on to the next question. It does seem as though John is having some technical difficulties. I'm not too sure if he'll be able to join us. So we will move on. And if he can rejoin, I will bring him back in to the conversation. But moving on to the next question, I'll come straight back to you, Neil, with this one. Which players so far this season in those 3 games, don't include preseason, just the 3 Premier League games, which players have you been most impressed with so far? and which players potentially, and it's difficult, but potentially concerned about, if any?
I'll start with the ones that I'm concerned with because I kind of have that already. I'm a little bit concerned with Saka, and not his form, because I believe that's gonna happen and Saka's gonna eventually do his thing. But I'm not. I feel like a lot of our play right now, and you saw it in statistics yesterday, that it came from the left hand side. So naturally, that right hand side where he's located, you see that even when Martin Odegaard yesterday was kind of on the right hand side, he took the play back to the left hand side and had Gabriel Martinelli and Jesus continue pounding the box. So I don't know. I saw Saka trying to make some runs yesterday. The ball just didn't get to him, or the ball just didn't get past to him. So I'm wondering now, like, what's gonna happen? Is it that we're focusing? Is that our game plan? I hope that we're not a one-trick monkey here. But I wanna see a little bit more from him. Who stood out so far for me this season? Saliba, obviously. You know, Martin Odegaard has upped his game. He's a lot more intense than he was before. And Gabriel Jesus, man, he's just a cut above the rest. Absolutely. I said it yesterday in the chat. Check his boots for glue, because that ball just stuck to his foot. And
especially
he just
first goal.
Yeah. So yeah, those three stood out for me so far for the season.
No, mate, you make some very, very good points, and I think, don't quote me on this because I know people might go away and do their research and their homework, but I think Martin Odegaard has now made the most progressive passes in the Premier League out of everyone. That was prior to the 2 games today. I don't know if Kevin De Bruyne is up there with him, but yeah, out of the 3 Premier League games that have been played, he's made the most progressive passes out of every Premier League player, which is really, really good to hear. Saka, you make a good point. He has had a slow start to the season. And I don't know if I mentioned it in my video yesterday, the tactical analysis video after the game, but I'm not as concerned about Saka at the moment compared to last season, where we were struggling for goals and a lot of the pressure was on him. And it was him that we looked to often to be creative, to score the goals, provide assists. The way I'm looking at it now with Saka is there will be weeks where all 3 or 4 of our attacking players will be firing on all cylinders, which is great. Those are the weeks where we might batter teams 3-4, 5-0, for example. But there will be other weeks where, we're relying more on Martinelli and Jesus. And then when they're not firing, a Saka comes into form and we're not having to have everyone out of form at the same time. So Jesus, unless he proves me wrong, I can't see him having this vein of form for the entirety of the season. There will be a period where that drops off. And when that eventually happens, maybe a Saka can potentially step up to the plate. That's my hope anyway.
That's your hope. Okay, but let me just add that I would rather see that there's a consistent rotation of the way we play the football in the game itself, rather than we come down and maybe it's a tactic. Maybe they might overload wherever our opponents might overload wherever we're coming down and try to block that side, and that's where Saka is going to be able to apply his game. But I would prefer to see, and this is just me being a complete novice, not being a manager at all, like to see a proper rotation of both our flanks attacking. That way it's going to obviously make our opponents wonder where they're going to attack now. Give them something to think about.
No, absolutely. And you look at the Liverpools and Cities where we're aspiring to be in years to come, and you look at their wingers, and that's exactly what they do. So we have to remember as well, I think, the excitement levels are there, aren't they? With the football we've played in these first 3 games, you kind of expect all of the boys to be firing. But coming to you, Keith, who has impressed you so far or not so much?
I'll start with those who, I'm not saying they've underperformed, but like Neil said, Bukayo Saka hasn't quite hit the heights that we were expecting. But I think we need to remember the last 2 summers, he's not really had a summer off. We had the European Cup of Nations or whatever it's called this year, Euro season before. And when you compare Zinchenko and Martinelli and how quickly they formed this incredible bond, this incredible understanding, Saka's, over the last 2 years, he's had Tomiyasu, Cedric, now he's got Ben White, and he's trying to form new relationships with these players. As much as I hate to agree with either Carragher or Neville, they both alighted to the fact after the Crystal Palace game, because Ben White's distribution has been a little bit sketchy at best. There's a couple of times he's left Saliba in it. There's a couple of times when he's been going forward, it's not been that great. But to move from a central position to a wide position is quite a big deal, and you've got a lot more space in front of you. And I saw a massive improvement, even though Benny Blanco gave the ball away a few times yesterday. His forward play when he's getting round Saka, you saw it with the second goal when he put the ball in, and Gabriel Jesus, he must have been furious when Odegaard nicked it off his boot, but it was the right thing. But I'm seeing improvements there, so I think that's probably got a lot to do with why Saka. The first game he was outstanding. The second game, yesterday's been a little bit quieter, but it's almost like the players. I'm not saying maybe they have got a little bit more faith in going down the left, but also when you look at Jesus, he tends to drift to the left as well. So maybe that's the 3 of them: Zinchenko, Martinelli, and Jesus. Maybe that's more of a formidable triangle for us at the moment. And it's going to take, if Ben White stays at right back, it's probably going to take him another 2 or 3 games to really get to grips with that role. Even though he's incredibly versatile and he can play right back, he can play in front of the defence, and he can play as a central defender as well. It may well take him a little bit of time. So I'm prepared to be patient with that, but I entirely agree with what Neil's saying. It's just that Saka's maybe a little bit below what we've all been expecting. Yeah. But, he's 2021 and he's just played his 100th game in the Premier League. So we've, he's still a kid. He's still a kid. As for Gabriel Jesus, he is almost like a combination of the best of Lacazette and the best of Aubameyang, with the speed, the goal scoring talent, and the work rate in the team play. And how strong was he for that first goal yesterday?
Ridiculous.
His first touch was ridiculous, but how strong he was. And he's so quick, and he will run himself into the ground for you. And that's what we want. And I've always said my minimum requirement is that these players play like they care as much as we do. And we're seeing that now, especially from Jesus. Saliba's impressed me massively, and I can see why Tavares and Balogun have been sent out to France on loan, because I think they've looked at what France gave Saliba last season. Yeah. And the first 2 games, he was my man of the match. And weirdly, because when I played, I was either an out-and-out winger or a forward. And I should probably be looking at forwards, but I've almost, in my old age, I've developed this appreciation for fine defending. And Saliba's footballing IQ, for somebody who's 21, not even talking about the finish that he put in yesterday, which was ridiculous. His footballing IQ for somebody so young is brilliant. But my favourite signing so far has been Zinchenko. And 2 things he did yesterday. When I was growing up, my favourite defender was Franco Baresi in the great 1990s AC Milan side. And I used to watch Football Italia on Channel 4 with my dad. And he's like, just watch this bloke. He doesn't have to make a tackle. He's that good. Yeah. And he reads the game that well. And 2 things Zinchenko did yesterday. There was the one time when he just pulled the ball down and passed it away. And in the second half, I can't remember who the striker was, but he was going through. And a lot of defenders, they would have gone in for the 50-50 because you don't want him getting too near to goal. And he just waited and waited and waited till the striker made a mistake. He didn't have to tackle him. He just took it off him. And his distribution and his versatility, I think he's going to be our best signer of the season. So he's the one that sticks out for me the most, is Zinchenko.
Yeah, they've all been very, very good. And it's just one thing I do like about the new signings as well is how quickly they've settled in. into this squad. It doesn't feel like there's been a transition. It just feels it's just happened so naturally, which is so good to see. And John, sorry, not Judge. John is joining us in the chat. It does look like he won't be able to join us for today's conversation live, but I'm sure he'll contribute to a few questions in the chat if he can. So moving on to the next question. Now, as most people will know watching the channel and the pair of you as well, I love my tactics. I love my analysis. So I just want to kind of get your thoughts on a few bits and pieces. I think we can all agree that Arsenal have had a great start to the season, definitely. However, I was keen to hear what you've made of Arsenal and Arteta tactically, and what you might have done maybe a little differently from a game plan point of view from what you've seen so far. Coming to you first, Keith.
As you well know, I've always been a fan of Arteta, and I think it was important that we were patient with him. We could see what he was trying to do. And looking back, you look at the amount of detritus that he's had to get rid of, the toxicity in the dressing room. And we're almost there now. We're very nearly at a point where we've moved on everybody who probably shouldn't have been there. Regarding tactics, more than happy. You could see from probably the first time I noticed it was one of his very early games against Chelsea. They beat us 2-1 in the end, but the first half, the intensity and the press, and we were trying to move the ball very quickly, and that's what we're doing now. And we're transitioning from defence to attack in the way that we should be. So I'm really, really happy with what we're doing so far. The only thing I would like to see more of, with Emile Smith-Rowe coming back to fitness, I've always seen him as a box-to-box player. I think that would be his best role. He's got, I don't want to take anything away from Granit Xhaka, because I think with his more advanced role, Arteta's got a good balance with him and Thomas Partey right now, and he seems to have found a really good formula. The only thing that I'm still not sure about with Xhaka is pace across the ground. And when you look at someone like Smith-Rowe, he's always been able to break those lines because he's got that turn of pace over 5 yards. He probably hasn't quite got the guile and the experience and the intelligence to pick a pass yet that Xhaka's got. But I would like to see, because Arteta's making a lot of substitutions, especially with the new rules this season. But he's making wholesale changes. And one of those I'd like to see is maybe ESR coming in for Xhaka to play that more advanced role, as opposed to playing the Odegaard role, which he did yesterday. I understand him doing that yesterday because we were defending a lead. And you don't really want to take your defensive pivots playing well, so you don't really want to change that. But I would like to see him getting more time as the advanced six, I suppose, alongside Partey, because I think over the course of his career, that will probably be his best position. But other than that, really happy.
Yeah, no, I'm very, very happy tactically so far as well. And you make a good point with Emile Smith-Rowe, because I think that was the first time for quite a long time that he's actually been brought on in the middle of the park. I know it was to replace Odegaard, but I think the biggest tell as to whether or not he will play in that central role, for me at least, is whether or not we go on to sign a central midfield player between now and the end of the window. Because I think if we did, I think he will play out wide, only because with Vieira coming back to fitness, it just makes it a bit difficult. Maybe I'm wrong. But initially in the youth system, he played there, hence why he was given the number 10 shirt, because he wanted to play through the middle as more of an attacking midfield player. So it's a really interesting one, because he, like you say, he's so versatile. He can play out wide. He can play through the middle. He's got loads and loads of energy. So it's him you need to keep an eye on, and the transfer market at the same time on what ends up happening with him. So, Neil, talk tactics to me, mate.
I think what I like the most so far, and in what I'm seeing, is I'm seeing relationships on the pitch. I'm seeing like friendships. I'm seeing, and this is something that I think we spoke about many moons ago when I was doing my own channel, whenever that decides to come back up and raise itself from the dead. But remember I was saying back then that we needed to develop relationships to the point that I need to know where Keith is going to be, and not even looking or turning my head. And I believe that's what's happening with the likes of like Gabriel, Martinelli, and Xhaka, and Zinchenko. Like that, you can see that there's a straight relationship there. In the middle of the park as well, there's a relationship between Partey, Xhaka, and Odegaard. You're seeing these link ups happening, and let's not even talk about our backline. Our backline has been like, I can't even believe this is our backline. Like, this is something that we've all been praying to see happen. And now we're also seeing what Arteta's been trying to do since he's been here. And I think we need to really I need to tip my hat to him and raise my hands up, because I've been one to like lose my patience and say it's time for him to go.
Yeah.
But now I'm seeing what he's been trying to implement in terms of positional play, where you need to be for this specific ball when we're at this specific part of the pitch. And not only that we're seeing it now, but it helps seeing the actual transition of the play on the pitch while we're watching the game. Like, you're seeing these things happen in live. Like we're actually seeing a pattern of play now.
Yeah.
Something that we weren't too sure about before. So I'm happy to see how tactically we've grown. Arteta has grown as well as a manager in terms of what he wants and how he wants it, and being backed by the hierarchy, and being able to make bold decisions and request so much from the team. Yes, it's only 3 games, but you're seeing signs of it and what it can bring.
Yeah, you are.
So I'm hoping that we can stay healthy, which is my major concern, and I'm sure we're going to get onto that. But we do need an extra 3-4 signings before we need to get where we would like to be as a club and what we'd like to aim for. But for this window, I'd like to see at least 1 or 2 more signings come in just to solidify our midfield, because I'm worried about our midfield.
We'll come on to that, don't you worry. I've got a lovely little transfer market question lined up for the pair of you.
Nice.
You do make some very good points, though, about tactics. A lot has changed since Arteta came in. If we take ourselves back to when he first took over, and there was a huge over-reliance on Kieran Tierney getting down that left side in the Europa League, with Granit Xhaka dropping in as effectively a left-back at times. And when we look at where we are now, with Zinchenko coming inside as an inverted fullback, making numbers up in midfield, creating overloads. And one thing that I do like is there was something last season, and even maybe a little bit the season before, everyone kept saying, this isn't Arteta's team. Last season, it was like, right, this is nearly Arteta's team. There's only 1 or 2 players left in this squad now. I think it might be Xhaka and Holding. I might be missing 1 or 2 that have been signed by previous managers, barring obviously the Haaland graduates. But this now is... And El Neni, yes. But this now is effectively an Arteta team. And now that he's got the players that he wants in the positions that he wants, we're now starting to see what he was building towards. But as you say, we're still at least a few signings away from definitely competing. We need to be consistent at a top level. And I think if we can get back into the Champions League this season, next season will be huge in terms of the transfer market. We may be in that position Liverpool were in, where they needed to make those marquee signings when they made, I think it was Van Dijk and Alisson, 70 million plus type signings, the final pieces of the puzzle. We're not quite there yet. We're very, very, very close to it, in my opinion. Okay, so just before we move on to the next question, Tom brought something up here in the chat. I just wanted to speak about very, very briefly. How many goals do you think Eddie is going to get this season? I've got a bet with George. I'm saying 20 max. I'm assuming 20 max across all competitions, not just the Premier League. He may be up for Golden Boot if it was. I'm going to say a maximum of 10. And that's not because I'm being negative. It's more a case of, if we look at the amount of game time he's already got this season in the first 3 games, and I do feel that he will get obviously Carabao Cup minutes, Europa League minutes, he might push 12. That's just my opinion. with Jesus offering what he offers, even when he's not scoring goals, he's still going to offer this Arsenal team a lot. And I think that Eddie Nketiah is going to struggle to get into a consistent run of form of 5, 6, 7 games, for example, in the Premier League. But that's just my opinion. What do you think, Keith? Oh, you're on mute. Oh, he's gone.
Oh, here we are.
Here we go.
I do that at work all the time. I agree. I think double figures is probably as much as we can hope for Eddie, because the same reasons as you, Jake. He's not going to get the game time ahead of Gabriel Jesus, other than Europa, Carabao, early FA Cup games. He will potentially start those. But I think double figures is as much as you can hope for. And even though there was all this talk about wouldn't he go last season, he's got to be learning from somebody like Gabriel Jesus. And, he's I don't know if he's a bit younger or the same age, but he'll learn a lot from him, and he's got to look at the big picture, how it's going to improve him as a player. And I think if he weighs in with double figures, he can see that as a success.
Yeah, no, I agree. He's going to get a lot more minutes this season compared to last, because he was, at the start of last season, he was third in the pecking order, wasn't he? In a system where we only played one striker. So, it would have taken something crazy for him to have played a run of games last season. So he's a little bit further ahead. Neil, just quickly, your thoughts?
I think he'll pick up about 5 goals in the Prem and across the cup, because he's going to be our cup striker. Various cups together, 6, 7 goals, so maybe 11, 12 goals overall for the season.
Judge coming in with a crazy comment here, in my opinion. Love your optimism, Judge. Absolutely love it. Okie dokie. So next question, and we've kind of already touched on this a little bit when we were speaking about who's most impressed us this season, but we'll sort of brush over this one very, very quickly. I just wanted to grab everyone's thoughts on the new signings, more specifically Jesus, Zinchenko, and Saliba in some respects as well, because although he signed for us 2-3 years ago now, we haven't actually seen him in an Arsenal shirt until, a few months ago in pre-season was the first time really that we'd seen him. So coming to you first, Neil, what have you made of those 3 players so far, this sort of impact they've had on this Arsenal side?
I mean, look at the board right now. Look at the Premier League. Look at the Premier League table. That tells you everything. The impact that Saliba has on the team, and he has been a topic of conversation because he's been here since Emery, and then we loaned him out when we signed him when we needed a centre back. You guys remember that story when we sent him back to Saint Etienne, and then Arteta came in and he went out on loan again. I think he went on the 2 loan spells under Arteta. His last loan spell was to Marseille, and I think Marseille was where he really, really became a proper defender. Like, not saying that he wasn't before, but where he got his calmness and where he was able to really apply his game was in Marseille, hence getting, defender of the season or whatever in France. As for Zinchenko, he's just been a delight. I agree with Keith. I mean, we expect Jesus to score. We expect him to come here and do that. But Zinchenko, man, the way that he showed composure, especially when that striker was on and he just knocked that ball away from him, I was like, oh my God. Like, thank you, football gods, for giving us, because I'm telling you, I know Pep Guardiola is kicking himself for selling us at least Zinchenko. He has his 2 strikers in Julian Alvarez and Haaland, but that left back position, I think he made a mistake. I think so. I love everything.
I think you're right. I think you're right. He adds a completely different dimension to Arsenal from a tactical point of view. If we go back to last season, we saw Tavares when he was playing well. He was a very attacking fullback, great crosser of the ball, electric pace, very much all about the width. Kieran Tierney, great defender, very powerful going forward. Again, another really good crosser of the ball. Didn't very often come inside, whereas Zinchenko can do both. He can come inside and make those numbers up in midfield. But he can also go on the outside. I love how he doubles up with Granit Xhaka in that left half space, as well as Gabriel Jesus dropping into that half space, creating those overloads in midfield. They've done it the last 2 games now.
He was even on the right side of the midfield yesterday.
Yeah.
Like,
it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. The only other player that I've seen do it to an even better level is Cancelo at Man City, who's obviously on a completely different level when it comes to playing that inverted fullback role. But you are right. I think Pep will, come the end of the season, be kicking himself. So, Keith, what are your thoughts on the 3 players mentioned?
There's not a great deal I could add to what you guys have said. With Saliba, I had never watched him play. I don't watch French football. I'd never watched him play until the pre-season friendlies, and especially the first Premier League game of the season. Like I said earlier, there's a couple of times when Benny put him in the shit a little bit, and his footballing IQ is brilliant. He reads the game well. He's 21 years old. He's an absolute unit as well. He's not going to be pushed around. Yeah, he's got a much better physical presence than White's got, I think. And I've been very, very impressed with him. Gabriel Jesus, lots of people were bantering us looking at his stats. His goals per game ratio wasn't very good. But when you gave the guy a run of games at City, he scored goals. I think he scored 5 in 3 towards the end of last season for him. And he's been everything that I hoped he would be. And he's the striker we've been crying out for donkey's years. Probably the closest thing we've had to a great striker since Thierry, I would say. He's got that much potential. And again with Zinchenko, Pep's got to be kicking himself that he sold us those 2 guys for the money that we got them for. Because at the moment they're looking an absolute snip. And I would say all 3 of those 9 out of 10 so far.
They have been. But I completely agree with you on the 9 out of 10s as well. And the one thing that I'd like about Saliba, not from the point of view of his performances, but I like the fact that we've now got 3 top centre backs. So if someone gets injured, we know we've got a top quality third option to come in there with Tomiyasu, who can come in at right back. But it also means that none of those 3 centre backs in training every single day, none of them can take a day off, because the minute they take a day off, Arteta's going to be on their case. And for those of you who have watched the All or Nothing documentary, when he had COVID and he said he watched videos back of Arsenal training sessions, and he said that there were 4 players who would have been booted out of training for the levels that they've shown. That's what I love. I just love that we've got that quality in depth now, that they're constantly, those 3 centre-backs are going to be pushing each other every single day, which is just good news for us Arsenal fans. So, and speaking of All or Nothing, I'll come to you first, Keith. Me and you have had quite a few chats about this offline. I've watched most episodes now. I think we all know, unfortunately, how the series ends. But what were your thoughts on the documentary? What positives have you taken from it? What negatives have you taken from it? What knowledge have you gained from it?
The first thing I'd like to say, I'm on episode 4 and I've stopped for a bit. Few reasons. Been really, really busy with other stuff, but I'm enjoying it so much I don't want it to end. So I'm taking my time. It's a bit like when I got to season 4 of Ozark. So I'm going to take my time with this because I don't want it to finish. But also, obviously, we know how it finishes, and those are dim and dark memories. So I'm kind of not looking forward to that so much. I didn't like in the first episode where there was so much emphasis on like getting into the fans, Arteta in, Arteta out. It seemed like there was this whole big, like, the AFTV influence and everything. I didn't like that so much. The thing that I've really, really taken from it is I liked Arteta as a person anyway. And maybe that's one of the reasons why I was very patient with him when things were really, really bad. Because I like the guy. I like his morals. I like his principles. I like how important the history of our football club is to him. And he seems like, even though he's tough, I wouldn't want to get on his wrong side because, as you said, with someone don't train properly, you're out. And that's the way it should be. And a lot of the things that we all talk about and we're like, he should have picked him, we don't see them train every day. He does, and that's something we all need to remember. And his coaching team is absolutely top drawer, and they pick up on everything. But I think the main thing for me is just Arteta has all the right principles and all the right morals. He's all about the history of the club. Players have got to have the right attitude. You know, if you're captain and you're late for a North London derby, you're effectively gone. Captain should be the first player there for every game, let alone a North London derby. And I fully backed him when he got rid of Aubameyang, and I'm pleased the bloke's gone, to be honest, because his attitude stank. But that's a whole nother episode. The other thing I've taken is the amount of feedback the coaching staff give to the players. And AirPod Albert, he's a tough bastard as well, to be honest. I didn't realise, he's an absolute ball breaker, this bloke. But who's the guy that sits down with them? Is it Carlos? There's one episode he sat down with
development coach.
Yeah, and he's going through everyone. I love that, and I love the fact that, and Tavares, I like to the fact that he's a younger guy, so he can relate to these young men who are trying to find their way in the game. And the pressure that these guys must be under anyway, I can't imagine what that must be like. And I just love the way, not only, obviously they want the end result, they want the results, they want the 3 points of it. You know, that's what matters at the end of the season. You know, after the 38 games, where are we in the league? But there's a lot of care and attention put into just the well-being of the players as well, and talking to them about where they've gone wrong, where they could have done better, and trying to encourage, as opposed to, you know, knocking them down. That's not good enough.
Yeah.
So I think the whole science of everything that he's bringing in, that's the big thing I've taken from it.
It's a big thing I've taken from it as well, is the process. You know, I think last season, a lot of the time, you know, fans would bash Arteta as being this big PR man and it's all fake, you know, and this documentary has now allowed us fans to not only connect with the players better, to see their human sides, but it's also to show us that, you know, there is a bit of method to the so-called madness, which was a stick that he was beaten with last season, especially on social media. Now we're actually seeing that. We're seeing those blocks and those bricks being laid, those foundations, and understanding what Arteta is working towards. I think some of his pre-match and halftime team talks were interesting at times, but it makes you wonder then, doesn't it? You know, what goes on in dressing rooms up and down the country before, during and after a game. So Neil, coming to you next, my friend. What have you taken from it? The good, the bad, the ugly?
Everything that Keith said. In addition to that, the Nottingham Forest loss, when he came into the dressing room after that loss, you saw not just the anger and the frustration, but what he's been trying to say all along.
Yeah.
And that is, if you're not doing it on the training pitch, I don't care what your name is, I don't care what your salary is, I don't care how many trophies you've had before, but in this club, if you're not doing it on my training pitch, you're not going to do it out there. And he can't, and that's the trust that he's looking for in these players.
Those non-negotiables that he mentions.
Exactly, those non-negotiables. And that for me was my biggest takeaway. I've not watched all of it. I still have 3 more episodes to go. I'm like Keith, I don't want it to end. But that non-negotiable and the way that he dealt with the Aubameyangs and the Guendouzi's and all these players that felt like you know, they're the best players. I'm not coachable. I can do what I need to do come game day. That's gonna transmit onto other players, because from the time where we get to a certain stature, these players are going to become like you can't coach them, uncoachable, and that's good. And remember, he was speaking on the sidelines with the doctor, like, what do I do when they was in Dubai? What do I do about this situation? You just drop it, you just let it go, and it's gonna transfer into this one and that one. So yeah, he's right. He's absolutely right, and I feel like and I don't want to sound like I'm getting down on this player, but sorry, I feel like Pepe is that one last player that has that type of mentality.
Yeah.
You know, I could be wrong, but I feel like a lot of people say, Pepe has not been given a fair chance, and I think he has. You get 90 minutes of game, like that's where you need to show it. You get your chance every single day when you go to the club and you go to train. That's where you get your chance. It's not the 90 minutes that the fans get to see. So that's my takeaway, man. This has shown me to support the manager.
No, you make a very, very good point, especially with the way he dealt with the Guendouzi situation, which obviously we didn't get to see during the documentary. But because of the way we've seen him deal with the Aubameyang situation, again, last season, Arteta faced a lot of criticism for the way he dealt with these players, but we didn't actually see what was going on behind the scenes. And now that we have seen it, it all kind of makes sense, and people have backed off from those criticisms of Arteta. And when you've got a group of players that buy into these non-negotiables, and then you've got one or two players that don't, you can see why they're being left out on the sidelines. And a good example of that for me is Eddie Nketiah. You've got Lacazette as a senior player last season, captained effectively after Aubameyang left, and he weren't performing. And at the back end of the season, Eddie Nketiah played 5 or 6 games because he clearly showed that in training, that hunger, and eventually rewarded with a new contract. So yeah, you do make some very, very good points. And speaking about players leaving or maybe signing, something that we touched on in the last episode of Arsenal Analysed Live was transfers. Arsenal haven't actually made any more signings, shall we say, since the last episode, but plenty have left and still some potentially on the way out. The rumour mill still in full swing. And coming to you first here, Neil, both ins and outs. What do you want to see from the club between now and deadline day?
Minimum 2 more signings. If we're talking the talk right now. We're doing that, but we cannot leave. And I get what Arteta said. He wants top quality, or it just doesn't make any sense. He also wants the right players with the right mentality, which also wouldn't make sense. You don't want to bring bad eggs into the team. So I really hope that we could find those players to really carry us or kind of solidify our place in top 4. And I really want to see more than ever a midfielder to support Partey if he does get injured, and a winger, because it seems as if Pepe is going to be gone.
It does.
Yeah.
With the way it's going. The whole, I completely agree with Arteta in terms of bringing in the right players based on, attitude and wanting to be here. And this was further highlighted in an interview that Edu recently done where, he'd want to understand, a player's mentality first. And he brought up that example of a player that he spoke to in Dortmund, and all he wanted to do was talk about money. So, Edu walked away. Absolutely loved that. But it could potentially be a double-edged sword whereby we could bring a player in. Or sorry, should I say we don't bring a player in and we're left short in midfield or out wide, should there be injuries or suspensions? Or, do you run the risk of bringing in the wrong player to, bring that squad depth? It's like, which way do you go? And we kind of felt that a little bit at the back end of last season, didn't we? Where, we didn't make those January signings because, clearly the wrong mentalities or the right mentalities weren't available.
Right. But I feel like we kind of already have the players. They're just not mature enough with the likes of the Marquinhos and the Fabio Vieira. I feel like, those are the players that could also fill those roles. But I feel like we need something a little bit more Premier League ready. I'm not sure if I'm 100% on the Tielemans talk anymore, because I feel like we're going in for him, and I feel like we are going to get him. But I'm wondering now, is he the kind of player that we really want? Does he have the mentality? He looks a little bit heavy. I have questions over his fitness. So we'll see what happens.
Okay, Keith, what are your thoughts on the whole? What you want to see between now and deadline day?
Very similar to what Neil said just now, really. We are a couple of players short, and anything could happen. Suspensions, injuries is still not ironed out. I think the thing is, when you look at how we kind of capitulated at the end of last season, when we lost players like Partey, like Tierney, and even though Mo Elneny came in and did a good job, he's not. I love Mo Elneny. I love the fact that he loves our club and he'd run through a brick wall for us. But he's kind of a make weight, I suppose. Even though we need to upgrade in probably the central and another midfield, another winger position, we're in a better position now than we were at the end of last season. Our squad is stronger. We almost have two very good players for each position. And with it's looking like Pepe probably will go, we will definitely need cover for Saka or somebody to push Saka, because he's a human being at the end of the day. And if he's got no opposition or he's got no competition for his role, then he's not. You need that as a footballer, any competitive sport. You need somebody to be pushing you, and that's what happens in training. If nobody's pushing you, that's when you go off the boil and you get a little bit complacent. So I think maybe the wide position, if it was going to be one of the two, the wide position is perhaps more important for me, because I think obviously that bloke there, I'd love to see him playing in the middle, and I'm very, very biased when it comes to Emil. But I think the wide position is perhaps more important for Saka's development as much as anything else.
I know, I agree. It is it's a difficult one, and it brings me on to a quick fire question before we move on to the final two questions of today's second episode of Arsenal Analysed. And Keith, I'm going to come straight back to you on this one. If for whatever reason, hypothetically speaking, it could happen. By
the way, have we got a timer?
I feel like there should be background music for this.
If Arsenal could only sign either a central midfield player or a right winger between now and deadline day, which would you pick and who would it be? Coming to you first, Keith.
It would be
Feel free to get involved in the chat as well, people.
I would say a winger, and I would probably go for Gakpo. I really, really like him.
Powerful player. Yeah, very, very, very good.
Yeah.
I was dying to do a scout report on him at the start of the transfer window, but the links they weren't strong enough for me to do it. So maybe I'll get my wish. Maybe. Neil, talk to me.
It will be a midfielder. I feel like we win games in the midfield, and we need to be powerful there. So, and if the player has to be, it will be Tielemans. It has to be Tielemans. We've been linked. It's just like a Benzema link. We just need to get this one over the line.
Yeah, we do. It's literally right there for the taking, isn't it? I think Arsenal and Edu might be playing a good old game here of chess, bit of chess poker, whatever you want to say. And it's gonna. I reckon it'll be a deadline day signing and try and panic Leicester maybe into selling him a little bit cheaper than what they originally asked for. Just the one comment in the chat on who Yeremy Pino is one player that I'm a big fan of as well. Young Spanish lad, part of the international scene as well. Done very, very well over in.
I don't know, man. I feel like if I had to choose a winger, I would go with Lucas Paqueta.
Okay. He's another one. He's very versatile, isn't he? Because he can play through the middle as well. And we know from all the signings that Arteta has made in the last 2 or 3 windows, it seems as though like every player we sign can play like 2 or 3 different roles. Gakpo, like you mentioned, Keith, he's another one. He can pretty much play anywhere across that front three. So some good names, some good mentions. One last serious question, I suppose, before we go on to some point predictions for the remainder of this calendar month. And I will come to you first, Neil. And it's something that Edu has come under quite a lot of criticism for in the past. I just wanted to get your sort of thoughts and perceptions of Edu and the way he kind of handles the sales or the giveaways, however you want to kind of label it, of players, really.
I'll start off with my one. I don't want to call it a criticism because let's face it, these guys are rookies. You know, him and Arteta, they've not been in their positions for a very long time. They don't have like a bag of career experience. So it's not a criticism, but I feel like when it comes to outgoings, like, you know, it tends to end up being a termination of contract for the players that we want to get rid of, which is a loss. And that is not entirely on Edu, because before him, not Arteta, but, you know, we gave these players these astronomical wages and they were not performing. So how can he now get rid of these kind of players? You know, no other club is gonna take them on with that type of wage, and they're not performing. So I guess that eventually is gonna fiddle out, and eventually those players are gonna be gone, whether it be termination of contract or not. In terms of what he's been doing about the incomings, I think it's just been, he's cultivating his own. Like, he's doing it. Like, this is his way of doing it, and I like what he's been doing. I like how he's been conducting the business, and especially going back to that point with that Dortmund link and that player that we were interested in.
I really like that.
Talking about, I like that. I don't. It's something. It shows he wants to keep the integrity of Arsenal, or rebuild the integrity of Arsenal, and not have players come here and just earn a huge wage. Like if it's Sandals Resort, you know, we've been at Sandals for quite a while. A lot of players just been coming.
With some of these players, we have been,
yeah. We've just been, you know, a kickback kind of place. So I'm happy to see what he's been doing.
Yeah, I'm fairly happy especially with regards to the incomings. Obviously, there's been a few question marks over the signing of Willian that didn't work out, and then obviously offering Aubameyang the new contract. But, you know, we weren't to know that what was going to happen ended up happening with Aubameyang. I do feel sorry for him a little bit with regards to the outgoings, and I'll grab your thoughts on this as well, Keith, in just a moment, because, again, me and you had quite a big chat about this offline. But he's faced a lot of criticisms for terminating contracts, and I think the biggest problem with a lot of these players that have ended up leaving the club, and Leno's an example of this, is everyone knew that he was in the last year of his contract. Leno made it fairly public that he didn't want to leave London and that he didn't want to be number 2 at Arsenal. So it puts Arsenal in a really difficult position then, because, you know, Fulham, they know he wants to go. And Arsenal run the risk of then losing him for absolutely nothing. And very similarly with the Aubameyang situation, Arsenal were in a position where they didn't want him in the club at all because he was going to become a bad egg. And then potential suitors see that, and they know that they can get away with, you know, potentially getting these players for free. We lose all control. We lose all bargaining power. I think the last time we actually had a bid for a player that wasn't a planned exit, like a Bellerin, a Pablo Mauri, so on and so forth, was Iwobi, who we got about £35 million for, because it was a player where a club was genuinely interested and we didn't have a need or a reason to sell him. So it's been quite a while, it feels like, where that situation, you know, for example, there were a lot of links this summer with Gabriel, our centre-back from Juventus. We said we didn't want to sell him. Gabriel said he didn't want to leave London. That could have been a situation where a £40 million bid would have come in potentially. It would have had to have been a big number because all of the control is with Arsenal. So I'm quite keen to see how Edu handles those situations as opposed to the ones where we haven't got as much power and control. So, Keith, I've babbled on now, it feels like, for about 5 minutes. What are your thoughts?
I agree entirely with both of you gentlemen. I've got a huge amount of sympathy for Edu. Firstly, because I mean, he's got a lot of stick. He's not got as much stick this summer as he did last summer when there were pictures of him at the barbecue and on boats, and it's like, come on, mate, you need to do your job. And he did a very good job with the incomings at the back end of the last transfer window. He's done a very good job at the front end of this transfer window. When I say I have sympathy for him, it's because he's very new at the job. Him and Arteta were both practically novices, when they both started. And he's been left with, he's in a very tricky situation in that the players who everybody knows we need to offload, all other clubs know that they're not part of our plans.
Yeah.
So they don't need to come in and say, Iwobi, 35 million, we want to take this player. They're looking at players like Reece Nelson, Bellerin, Mari, and Pepe. And the problem we have with Pepe is everyone knows how much we spent on him. Everyone knows what his wages are. He's a 25 million absolute top player at the moment. That's the most we would possibly get for him. Now, if we sell him now, the club know that they're going to get an unlimited amount of stick for selling a 72 million pound player for say 20 million a few years down the line. He will probably go on loan, let the dust settle, have a sell on in the deal, and he'll go away quietly. There's no way the club are going to let that be made public, that we've lost that much money on one player. And Edu's the one who's dealing with that. And unless I'm very, very wrong, he weren't even here when we bought Pepe.
No, he wasn't.
And there's a lot of players he's been left with. And like I say, everyone knows that they're not part of our plans. And everyone also knows that certain other players have gone for nothing or they've gone for peanuts. And that puts Edu in a very, very difficult position as a salesperson, which essentially is what he is when he's trying to get rid of players. And I've got sympathy for him, but he's improving a lot. And like yourselves, the story about the Borussia Dortmund player, love that. If all you want to do is come here for money, you're another Mustafi, basically. Brilliant.
Yeah, I completely agree. He makes some very, very good points. Okie dokie. So we are going to finish up with a fairly straightforward. There's only 2 games left of August. Before we get on to the final question, if you have enjoyed today's live show, please do drop a like. And if you have made it thus far and you're new around here and you've liked what you've seen, please do subscribe. And these 2 fine gentlemen will give us a little plug in around about 5 minutes' time for their own socials as well. Now, Keith, I'm going to come to you first on this one because you were on the first episode of Arsenal Analysed Live. Neil, I think we spoke offline with regards to your points prediction for August. Keith, you said, I think it was 13. I said 10. I saw a loss in August and a draw, as well as 3 wins. So we're at that point of 3 wins for me. With 2 games remaining, we've got Fulham up next at home, followed by Aston Villa midweek to finish off the month on the 31st of August. So I just wondered, Keith, really, are you going to stick with your 13-point prediction, or are you going to go as positively wild as Scott did and change your answer to a 15 maybe?
I'm going to go positively wild. I'm going to go for a 15. Do not get me wrong. Fulham will not be an easy game because the way we plays right into their hands. And the big lad Mitrovic up top, I'm hoping that between Saliba and Gabriel, they'll have enough to stifle him. But their counter-attacking game and their long ball game, they don't muck about at the back. They're not one of these teams that passes out from the back. They know if you pass them around at the back, it's dangerous, and they haven't got the players to do that. And their manager's done an absolutely brilliant job there.
Yes.
So I'm way more concerned about them than I am about Aston Villa, and there will be goals in it. Aaron Ramsdale probably won't keep a clean sheet in this game, but I think we'll just about come out, but it's going to be real close, and it won't be a lot of fun to watch for a lot of the time. But yeah, I'd said 13 originally because I thought we'd draw with Palace opening night. So I'm sticking with it. 15. Go on, lad.
15. Oh, that would be perfect opening month to our Premier League campaign. Neil, my friend, what are you going to go with? What are you going to go with, my friend?
I said 13 points. Did I expect us to achieve 9 of those points already? No, I didn't. I'm being honest here. And I agree with Keith. I'm very wary of Fulham, and I feel like that game is going to be a 2-1 to the Arsenal. It's going to be very tight. You heard it here for 2-1 to the Arsenal. So
it's tough. Both the games are at home as well at the Emirates, and Fulham, who played very well against Liverpool on the opening day, that was Fulham were at home. So home form for those teams coming up from the Championship is, effectively what keeps them up at the end of the day. So potentially, Arsenal being at home against Fulham could be a good thing.
Why the hell not? Let's go 15 points first month. Let's go, guys. Come on, you Gunners.
We've even got Judge in the chat as well, going with 15 points. And just to ruin the party, I'm going to go with 13. I did start with 10. I did start with 10 back 3 weeks ago. I did think there would be a draw and a loss in there. And I think because of the way we've unfortunately played against Villa at times, their form's been hit and miss at the start of this campaign. And Fulham haven't started so well, nicking a point against Liverpool. I can just see one of those games being a draw. I don't know why. I just don't know why. And I can't... I hope I'm wrong, but just Arsenal keeping this level of intensity up over the course of 5 games without making any changes. I don't know. So I'm gonna go different to everyone else. I'm gonna go with 13. I think we'll win one more, and there'll be a draw in there as well. Okay, so that is probably going to about wrap things up for the second episode of Arsenal Analysed Live. But before we do shoot off, a few plugs. Keith, you've recently changed the name of your YouTube channel. Would you like to explain?
I have. Yes, I've changed things up a little bit. It was called Mostly Arsenal, where I used to do a little about Arsenal and then some real life stuff. But I decided to change it because the Legends podcast, which was an offshoot, I was doing that purely on Arsenal players past and present. But then it dawned on me that this is the sort of thing that could run and run and run and run. And there's lots of other stuff I'm into as well, other sports, other walks of life. So I decided to just rebrand it as a Legends podcast, and there'll be lots of stuff on different clubs, different sports, musicians, actors, philanthropists. I did joke that there'd be politicians, but there won't be any politicians. I can guarantee you that much. But I'm currently working on the first episode, and as Neil will testify, American sports love the stats. Like looking into the stats of some of the stuff that I've been looking at, it's ridiculous. There's so much to go through. Okay. So I'm currently working on that, and I've got another one that my Twitter handle, the Mad Rambling one, that comes from a Facebook blog that I started a few years ago, which was quite successful. And I've decided to kind of go back to that, but keep that separate. So there's a lot more focus on each of the two things, and I'll keep that for shorter format stuff, like just going on Twitter and TikTok and things. But yeah, exciting times. Lots of work to be done. But the rebranding took a while. But I'm looking forward to it. So thank you for the chance to plug my own stuff there, Jake. Appreciate it.
No, not a problem. My pleasure.
Thanks for having me on again, by the way. I'm loving doing this.
Well, watch this space with Keith, and I've got all his details down in the description below. So go and head over to his YouTube channel, subscribe, follow him on Twitter as well. You will not be disappointed, especially with some of his funny stories away from the serious stuff. You may get a giggle in or two as well. But last and not least, we've got Neil. You mentioned earlier on that you've taken a bit of a break from YouTube, but plan to potentially boot it back up again. Where can the people find you?
Yeah, that's the BenchWarmerz podcast. You can find me on Twitter and on YouTube. I've not done anything in approximately 4 months. Been doing a deep dive into the real estate side of things, and I actually got a coach to help me with the real estate stuff. So I was advised to start a channel dedicated to real estate. So I might have a second channel. God help me. So we'll see how it goes. And I have a lot of intention to raise the BenchWarmerz podcast from the dead. Trust me, it's there. I watch it every single day and try to cope myself into doing something. But I like doing stuff with quality, and if it's just to throw something on there, it just doesn't make sense to me. You know what I mean? So we'll see how it happens. But you can check me out. There's a lot of stuff on there still. You can watch it as much as you want. BenchWarmerz podcast. See you guys soon, hopefully.
Hopefully, indeed. Just like Keith, I've got all of Neil's details down in the description below. So go and check him out. Subscribe, follow him on Twitter. That is going to about wrap things up for the second episode of Arsenal Analysed Live. As mentioned before, do keep an eye out on the page, as I will soon be launching memberships, which will give you an opportunity to feature in person with some of these fine gentlemen live to answer some of my weird and wonderful questions. But for now, I'm JC, Keith and Neil. Thank you very much. Stay safe and take care.